So, hello and welcome to the New Gig podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Hodgson. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by strategist and entrepreneur Kaia Parv. How are you doing, Kaia?
Doing great, Glenn. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. Now, Kaia, let's go back to the beginning. Just give us a little bit of an overview of your journey, a bit on your background, and also the things that you're involved with today.
Well, I'm native Estonian, not too far, Glenn, where you are currently based. For the viewers, it's a cold and dark country, but I would like to think our hearts are really warm. I graduated from uni in Estonia back in 2011, and it was pretty evident at the time there wasn't much to do in Europe. So I moved to Singapore, and literally I rolled the globe, and I was looking for a place that seemed warm and had welcoming immigration policies. So I ended up there. And Singapore, being very liberal country, was the land of all opportunities, I would say. So I was hired to a investment bank fairly quickly. I spent 6 years with Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and I was lucky enough to cover different types of roles. So I was in operations, I was in technology. Later on, I was moved to investment banking and global markets. So I had an almost 360 within the investment banking context.
Mm.
In 2018, I was very lucky to join a asset management company. So I started doing, let's call it portfolio management career. And COVID happened. So I spent a bit of time between Cyprus and London. And then 2021, life took me back to Singapore, where I was one of the early employees of a fintech company. So in a startup company, you can do a bit of everything. Like one day you sweep the floors, the next day you speak with the central bank, and everything else that's between. So that was, I would say, one
Definitely.
of most enriching and fulfilling experiences I've had. And that also paved the way to what I do currently, Glenn, and that's being a fractional CFO, CIO, and COO. I am a freelance consultant, and I provide strategic and also operational um, and sometimes even very, very manual support to different companies.
Excellent. And I think this is really interesting because it gives a little bit of a snapshot of what's happening in the world of work today in terms of using your knowledge, expertise, and experience to be able to offer this not just to one employer selling hours, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, but to be able to offer this to several companies and organizations that need these skills, maybe don't actually need a full-time person to be able to make use of that. So, I mean, I think this is a really very interesting development here, and is something that's happening within the future of work and the world of work globally at the moment, Kaya.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, COVID was an interesting phenomenon because it expedited a lot of the processes we were already seeing in the society. And I think the shift from, like you say, 9 to 5, very stable careers, years long career, has changed to something much more flexible, something much more autonomous, if you will. And I think it's both the companies and the employees realizing I don't need to be here from 9 to 5. I can be here from 9 to noon or 9 to whatever, 3 p.m. I can still get a chunk of work done. And
Mm,
also, my employment terms will be much more flexible. In fact, I would even say that a lot of the employees are now choosing the path of entrepreneurship through such solution because that allows them to be in control of their own taxes, allows them to be in control of their own benefits that they pay out, and they can service multiple different companies simultaneously, as you rightfully mentioned this. And I think all of this is even pushed further by automation and AI because some
right.
of the jobs are not even being outsourced anymore. They are now being automated, which opens up a completely new skill set that the companies need.
Absolutely. And within this, Kaya, what's the kind of the element of finding work, finding clients, the element of building your personal brand, getting out to the right individuals, organizations, companies, so they know who you are, they know what you can offer, they know what the value you can bring to the organization. How do you go about doing that in a local, but also a regional and an international setting?
Personal brand is something that we hear a lot, I would say, within the last few years, but I would say personal brand as a concept has always been there.
Mm,
Whoever has worked in a big organization knows how important personal brand is. In fact, when you when you look at the statistics, what has contributed predominantly people getting promoted, it's not even the quality of the work, it's who sees you, how visible are you. So I would say building a personal brand, at least for me, started already with Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Obviously, the quality of the work was the basic thing. You had to have
Yeah.
excellent output, but also being out there, being friendly, being outspoken, greeting everyone, let's say, when you get to the office. These are the basic things. And as time progressed, obviously, internet and LinkedIn and Instagram has offered us new ways how to build a personal brand. So I would say it's absolutely critical to have a personal brand, especially those young people who have maybe 20, 30, 40 years of work ahead of them.
Yeah.
If you don't sell yourself, nobody else is going to sell you. And doing it within a big organization is one thing, but when you do work, let's say in a smaller company, then use the tools available to you. Use LinkedIn, for instance. There are so many different professional networks offline as well, where you can join and participate. Make sure that people know you. And another interesting sort of avenue how to find customers among my friends, I've noticed that some of them who predominantly work in the tech sector have been employees before, but now they put up their hand and saying, hey, how about I offer you a service going forward? You don't need me as a headcount. I don't need to be part of your Excel table. Let me be a contractor for you.
Mm.
That allows them to have the same flexibility, the same autonomy. The company still get exactly the same service. They get the same hours, but instead of having an employee, they now have a contractor. So I see
Yeah.
this taking off increasingly as well.
Completely. And within this space as well, of course, it's working sort of multiple brands, multiple people. How does it work to juggle your time and the organization, the logistical elements, and not to mention probably the time zone elements as well that you need to adjust to?
Now, that's a great question. And I was just having the discussion with a friend of mine who was asking, oh, you must have such a great work-life balance. To be really honest, Glenn, when I started doing fractional jobs, I had exactly zero work-life balance. I felt I was working every day, all day, especially on weekdays and weekends as well, increasingly. But it's important to have structure. So I've structured my day, spending certain number of hours per client. At this point, I am still exchanging my time for money, if you will. There's no way for
Yeah.
me to outsource what I do, just
Mm.
because some of the projects are fairly specialized level or require my expertise. But I do see there is an element of potentially passing some of the tasks on.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to be quite strict with your time. You have to manage your time. Different techniques you can use, from Pomodoro to deep work, let's say 2 hours on the clock, just to get stuff done. And I think
Mm.
once you establish that, it's possible to service multiple customers in different time zones.
Mhm. And what's the good and bad elements of being a freelance consultant? There's people either see the positive side, or there's others who like to focus on the negative elements. But it'd be good to have sort of on balance, having done this for a few years, some of the pluses and some of the minuses from this work style.
I mean, for me, obvious, the big plus is the fact that I am control of my own work, meaning that I choose the customers I want to work with.
Yeah.
I only work with customers whose profile I like, whose culture I like, and I have dropped customers just because I don't like their culture. I don't like
Mm.
how they either treat me or how they approach work. The flexibility is amazing. Also, I see direct impact of my work, because I'm not brought in to join a bunch of meetings and just sit there and nod and fill in forms. I do a task, there's an outcome, and it's basically ticked off. So I absolutely love that side of it. Now, the downsides, if you will, obviously is a bit of uncertainty. What's the pipeline of my customers? How many clients am I going to have in 2, 3, 4 months? I also feel, because I'm a social creature and now I work from home, and I am based in a bit more remote country, if you will. I'm based in Thailand. I feel a bit isolated occasionally.
Mm.
And if it's a day full of deep work, I realize, oh man, I haven't spoken to a human being for the last 48 hours. So that's sometimes a bit bizarre concept, but lucky they are co-working space. And I would say the last element, when you are a digital nomad, meaning you are living away from your home country, there's obviously the tax problem. And tax sometimes is an issue because you have to be double taxed, so you have to find tax optimization methods. But to be honest, these are really the only things I would highlight.
Yeah. And it seems to be something that is becoming more and more popular to
Mm.
be an entrepreneur. Maybe it's because of the precarious nature of full-time work, that putting all your eggs in one basket is not really what it was. The whole idea of a job for life and security is no longer having a 9 to 5. It's having a portfolio career whereby, as any kind of portfolio, whether it's stocks and shares or lifestyle or
Mm.
opportunities, some things can go up, some things can go down, but you've got to hedge against uncertainty within this.
Yeah, I really like that way of thinking. And I would even say the number one skill anyone can have actually is skill acquisition, meaning the ability to learn.
Yeah.
I would never advise a young person this day and age go and specialize and get really, really good at your job and that's it. Learn how to learn how to see trends. What is the number one skill that can help you to build your network, whether it's from graphic design to I don't know, copywriting. It could even be trading options, or
Yeah.
just acquire some sort of video editing skill and pass that on. Teach other people, see how that comes across, and that can open up an amazing YouTube channel or revenue stream that you can monetize. So ability to learn, I think, is absolutely critical. And you are right, it will be a marketplace of different skills, and we already seeing this happening with Upwork and Fiverr.
Yeah. And this lifestyle seems to be more and more popular for a growing number of
Mhm.
individuals, Kaya.
Yeah, I would say probably again, COVID played a massive role here, but I think it's also generational change, Glenn. And I don't know if you agree with that, but I see younger people highlighting almost every interview or every conversation I have. It's really important for me to work with nice people. I want to have time for my hobbies. So I think that old school thinking that work is everything, you have to put your head down, it's just gone, and we have to adapt. I mean, the market is changing, people are changing, so it's the survival of the fittest, if you will.
And the survival of the fittest, who can adapt, who can be flexible and adapt to the new realities, as opposed to being swept away by it, I guess.
Absolutely. And very important to note that it goes both ways. It's not just the employees that have to adapt and have to change. It's also the companies that have to do it on the other side. And we've seen different companies having different approaches. Spotify is a great example. I think it's also a
Mm.
Swedish company.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
They openly promote flexible work. I'm sure they have offices here and there, but as far as I know, everybody's free to work from home. Whereas some other more traditional companies, they will take a bit of time. And I don't want to downplay the importance of skill acquisition in a workplace. Again, being from a traditional finance, if you will, having that access to colleagues and mentors and sponsors invaluable. So I think there are certain traits that maybe are easier to learn when you go to the office and you have that interaction, whereas maybe some other skills are easier to acquire or can be acquired just maybe watching a tutorial.
Mm. So it's kind of a blend of opportunities that are going to be the way forward, it looks like, then, Kaya.
I agree with such approach, and obviously the last line of defense to support the old way of work will be government jobs. Once government starts offering remote work, I think then we know that we have reached a new era or new paradigm of work.
And how does it look as well when we talk about sort of like fractional roles? What's your sort of viewpoint or your experience of companies and organizations adapting to that? Are they getting onto this new trend? Are they realizing that the top talent needs to have and wants to have a slightly different approach? Or are they kind of stuck in their old mindsets? It's taking longer for them to be able to adapt, to be able to think that we need maybe a blended workforce, some full-time employees, some contractors, freelancers, gig workers on the top, and being able to manage a kind of a more hybrid workforce.
I think change is happening gradually and obviously at a different pace within different sectors. I would
Yeah.
say startups are extremely open to any sort of fractional work. In fact, they are happy if they don't have to take on a full-time headcount when it comes at the senior level. The bigger organizations are a bit more hesitant, but then again, they actually have the most experience with contracting because there's always a large proportion of people who work for big organizations as contractors, whether it's 1 month, 3 month, 1 year, 5 year contract, they are still contractors. The difference or the nuance is, do I actually need that person full time? And also, I would say, at what level does the employee come in? Meaning, do they come in at the low level, aka project execution? Or do they come in at a more senior level? And I think the more senior level is one element where big organizations haven't really gotten comfortable with. Like, why would we take in somebody at the C level or
Yeah.
mid management level even? But I think, Glenn, with time that will change as well, and we need a few successful use cases for that.
I think the successful use case is very important for people to show that this actually works. It's keeping everyone happy, and it's a better way of adapting as well to kind of the work style, lifestyle that people are looking for. And it'll probably be talent led. We see all the sort of statistics, particularly here in Europe anyway, around the shortage of skilled labor, the fact that companies and organizations can't find the talent that they need. So probably a kind of a slightly different mindset, a different approach is what is going to be required to show that the value that can be added to an organization can be given from maybe a contractor, someone who can offer a part-time or a fractional role, as opposed to the traditional mindset and the traditional role-based hiring approach of HR and legal departments.
Yeah, that's brilliant point you raise because again, companies are struggling to find resource. We also see restrictions on immigration or migration, knowing that people
Yeah,
don't want let foreigners into their country. So how do you tackle that problem then? Are you
yeah,
going to increase the productivity of people, which yes, can be achieved also through automation and AI, can be achieved by introducing fractional roles. So maybe people can take on multiple jobs, or the work is being done, people sitting offshore. They are
yes.
sitting maybe in Asia, maybe in Africa, maybe in Latam, but the pool of talent is immense, and the world is becoming, in one way, it's more insular, but I think from talent perspective, it's becoming more global. Skills are being standardized, language levels are standardized.
Yeah.
Frankly speaking, you can get equally good headcount in maybe those a bit lower income countries than you would get in big financial capitals of the world.
So it's creating the opportunities for a broader range of people, but also maybe, addressing some of the issues that big cities are finding. It's pollution, it's overcrowding, it's sky high rents or mortgages that are crippling an increasing number of individuals, and particularly when we come to younger people who just can't afford to live in big cities or find anywhere. Maybe the kind of the more hybrid approach is a way that people can settle in different locations and have the best opportunities while being able to have that kind of work-life balance that they're looking for.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I would also say young people are exactly that population or that sector of the society that doesn't want to have a career anymore. So one
Mm,
side, they don't want to live in a big city. They don't want to live in a shoebox apartment on the 47th floor. And they see very low value in lifetime spent in one corporation. They want to see around, they want to try around. And one of my advice I give to young people whenever I speak to them is that at your 20s, spend time knowing testing what you don't want to do. You don't need to know what you want to do. At least
yeah,
eliminate a few options. And then we get closer and closer to the thing that maybe is your passion, or you can build some sort of career or skill set out of. So I think fractional or part-time work is beautiful for that, because you can really test how different companies work, what type
yeah,
of environment you like, who do you want to work with. And I would say in my own portfolio of clients, there is an amazing startup company that does exactly that. Everybody is remote. There is no office. So there's about 40% saving
yeah.
in overall overheads. overheads because you don't need to have printer, you don't need to have a coffee machine, you don't have to pay for office, obviously. So, and that's quite substantial. You can extend your runway by quite a few months.
Yeah, yeah. And this is sort of at the same time we're having these kind of return to office decrees that are coming from certain companies and organizations. How do you view this? Is this just a natural post-COVID blip? Is the genie out of the bottle in terms of the demands and requirements of talent, or in 5, 10 years' time, we'll be all stuck back in offices again, and this will all just seem like a dream?
I hope not. That's what I'm going to say. But I would say obviously the companies, some of them have long-term contracts, long-term leases, right? So they don't want
Yeah.
these offices being empty. So I get why they want to pull people back in. Moreover, in many of the bigger cities, there is also the element of the value of the building. If your offices are empty, the value is going to go down. That's going to cause, another problem down the road. So I
Mm,
understand it's not as easy that let's all just work from home and everything's dandy. So, but I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle anymore. I think
no.
that the secular trend is I think it's accelerating. Whether it's going to be hybrid, let's say full-time remote or part-time remote, or I think this is still to be figured out. But like I said, I think some industries will be faster to adapt, whereas some will be slightly slower.
Mm. And on a geographical perspective, because you've got sort of the foot in Asia now and you've had a good overview of the market for some time, is Asia more switched on to the possibilities here than sort of than particularly Europe and North America, or is it still something that is evolving?
It's evolving. Being based here in Thailand, I see a lot of digital nomads because
Okay,
Thailand is, I would say, one of the pioneers in the world in terms of opening up their borders to people who qualify that have foreign income, also in terms of tax. And I speak to people from all over the world that have chosen to work from Thailand. It seems to me that it's mostly North America that's open to such solution
right.
or such way of working. Europeans, I don't know if it's just the number of people that I interact with, but Europe is known to be a bit more conservative, so maybe it will take a bit of more time. But in Asia, a lot of remote work. Even people in Thailand, they don't go to the office; they work purely from home, although it's not
Yeah.
that long of a commute. So I think maybe the society here didn't mature to a point that everybody went in and worked all the time. Maybe that's why they are more open and willing to have remote work.
Yeah, yes, there's the different approaches there, but it's good to see that it's not just a local phenomenon. This is something that really is a global trend, and talent as well as companies and organizations need to be able to get on the back of this and be able to deal with it and integrate it into their corporate structures.
Yeah, and the people that work remotely, they cover almost every industry I've seen, different levels. We talk about data entry to, let's say, a retail company, but also at really senior level legal counsels, for instance, work
Mm,
remotely. So it's really all encompassing. Very hard to say if it's one industry that dominates or one seniority. It's very mixed. It's extremely mixed.
So the technology is there, and the possibilities are being utilized, which I think is something that's very, very positive, and gives us a great springboard both now and
Mm.
also into the future in terms of being able to utilize what's there and make the most of the situation for ourselves, for companies, but also revenue from our talent, skills, and knowledge, which should be kind of the focus for everyone in the present, but also the future of work.
Yeah, and I would say monetizing the skills is one thing I have had to learn because when you work for a corporate in particular, there's always a bit of self-doubt, like what is my actual skill set? What do I actually do?
Mm,
But also from startup company, when you've done a bit of everything, it's hard to pinpoint what is my actual skill set until you start speaking with somebody about what you've done, and then it opens up like, wow,
yeah.
these are all the things you can do. Maybe you can sell me your service. But one thing I would also add is I don't want to take away the experience of going and working with people. So I hope that young people that do listen to this podcast
Mm.
don't think that, oh, I can just go and spend all my time in my spare room or my parents' whatever spare room working. It's extremely important to have that face-to-face time, very important to learn from people who have done this job. And I contribute or attribute a lot of my own skills and success to working with people who are extremely experienced in their respective fields.
Excellent. Well, words of advice as well as living the day to day of the future of work, Kaia. So it's fantastic that you've been able to take the time to come on and explain a little bit about your own situation, what you're doing, but also the mentorship, which is a crucial role for others who are either doing it, starting out in this, or thinking about sort of taking the steps towards a more portfolio career. Really good advice. So very, very much thanks indeed for sharing all these hints and tips.
Thank you for having me once again. It was a lovely discussion and I really enjoyed it.